Good morning. Happy 4th of July. We are just one day after and actually had a pretty good week in the grains. December corn up 10 cents, November soybeans up 25, September Chicago wheat up 16, Minneapolis up 20. So a pretty good week across the board for grains. Of course, we washed out to new lows the previous week. August crude oil, outside markets also higher. August crude oil up 98 cents after $8 or $9 gains the week before. August gold up $59. So gains there, and the US dollar weaker. So all of these themes are mostly positive. The only negative thing is the crop progress report on Monday, June 30th. Corn actually improved 3%. That's a pretty big jump in July, the critical July 4th weekend. In the yield model, Progressive Ag increased 3.25 bushel to 188.1. We're now 7 bushels above USDA and almost 5 above trend. So now the corn crop is making strides, improving as we're going into summer. We could rarely have a record shattering crop. 180 bushel, our record last year, was actually a little below trend. And this year, right now, we could have a very big, it's 200 bushel corn is possible if we have the same kind of crop improvement that we've had the last 2 weeks over just the next 4 or 5 weeks. Soybeans unchanged, 66% good, excellent, but our yield model improved 0.36 bushel. Pretty hefty jump, 52.18 is our estimate. Actually, in contrast to corn, soybeans is still a little bit below USDA's 52.5, but also slightly above trend, 51.91. Spring wheat declined 1%. The wheat, where corn and soybeans are improving, wheat is going the opposite direction. Winter wheat conditions down 1%. Our yield model dropped just slightly to 52.74. 37% harvested, still 5% behind, but a pretty good week of harvest last week. There's still moisture falling though. 77% of the topsoil is good, is adequate surplus equal to the previous week. That's above last year. So still we have pretty good soil moisture in the United States starting July, 73% subsoil. So it makes a drought a less of a threat to adversely impact yield. Of course, temperature being the other factor. But look at corn actually bouncing to new lows on Monday this week and then bouncing back, actually Tuesday this week, bouncing back on the 4-day trading week short for the 4th of July. But look at bouncing back up above support, above the lows of the year. So corn is trying to rally. The only problem is the crop is improving so much. I wonder if that's a real rally. Some of this rally Thursday and Friday was attributed to the expectation that Trump was traveling to Des Moines, Iowa for July 3rd, July 4th period, and he would make an announcement regarding a trade deal with China. That didn't happen. So we could see some pressure on corn if no China trade deal is announced. Of course, he was focusing more on the big, beautiful bill that passed the House, Senate, and was signed by the president this week. So some improvement across the board, potentially on the economy, but no announcement on trade with China. Soybeans also rallied the last 2 or 3 days. You'd think a agreement with China would cause the soys to rally more, but soys are holding this uptrend. Realistically, they are still holding that uptrend. So we'll see where soys can go from here. Here's the Chicago wheat market also rallying. And look at this, holding that key support area despite significant increases in corn and soybean yield potential. And here is the spring wheat market, big rally the last few days, looking like the potential for that market to continue its rally as well. Actually, much stronger actually than the other markets. Moving to the outside markets, crude oil stabilizing this week after that $8 decline last week, but crude oil obviously holding some of that strength. I think the fact that big beautiful bill, big tax cuts and cuts in spending passed and was signed by the president probably will support the economy. Here's the forecast for the next week, though. This is not necessarily, look at Kansas, and not necessarily a good winter wheat harvest forecast. You could have some problems emerge again in the winter wheat harvest. So that kind of was increased in wetness forecast here over the last few days. And here is the 8 to 14 day forecast. Not too threatening. There's some heat in the United States, but not actually primary corn belt, not all that much heat. And the moisture has moved out. It was above normal for most of the country. Now we have some below normal here in the western US and still some above normal down in the southeast US, but the corn belt proper, not necessarily seeing it. Hot, dry, of course, is a big threat in July, but we really don't have that. It's kind of a little bit warm and a little bit wet. So probably a pretty good growing season forecast. This is the most bullish thing about commodities. The dollar running to new lows again this week and having losses for the week. But look at the value of the dollar. Of course, we aren't balancing the budget yet. We're still adding. The big beautiful bill actually adds to the potential deficit because at least the CBO thinks the tax cuts will be bigger than the revenue, the spending cuts. And here is the gold market. The gold seems to sense that the dollar has no weakness. It's holding this support shelf and hasn't broken that yet. But boy, the dollar, if we don't get our fiscal house in order, the dollar may continue to decline and gold continue to rise. So we kind of have a situation that's odd. The crop is actually improving significantly in corn and soybeans, yet we rallied the market this week. We'll see how much of that was due to expectations of a China trade deal being announced. It wasn't announced over the weekend, so unless something happens in the next few days, we could see some pressure Monday morning. But the key question is, will this crop continue to improve? And then, what next is on the Trump agenda now that he's passed a big, beautiful bill in Congress? It's very likely that he's going to turn his attention to trade. And of course, the July 9th deadline is coming up for those trade deals to be announced and before he just imposes tariffs back on those countries. So obviously, there'll be a lot of news this coming week. Hope you have a great weekend and yet a great 4th of July and good marketing.